All right, you notice every prominent Democrat, and the coup de grace last night, Hillary Clinton, blaming James Comey, blaming hack attacks, lunar eclipses, you name it, anything but what really hit them. But just go through what they said accounted for their loss. You have fake news in that mix, media was unfair, the electoral college system stinks, Comey's evil, Russia and all that, and then Tiger Woods, he was going to come back and start golfing any moment. So you've got the gist there for some problems you knew were brewing. To the Washington Examiner, Sarah Westwood, RedAlertPolitics editor Ron Meyer, and Democracy for America Communications Director Neil Sroka. Okay, so Neil, you say that a lot of them are valid excuses. What I'm saying is none of them were being raised prior to the election, maybe because they were so confident that as Democrats that they were going to win. Now they're all cropping up out of nowhere, and I mean, eventually you have to look in the mirror and say, hey, we goofed, right?
Well, listen, I think, number one, there was discussion of Russian hacking prior to the November result. In October, the president and others were talking about Russian interference.
Not nearly as much as there was about Donald Trump's potty mouth.
Well, I mean, Donald Trump kind of stepped in it himself. I mean, when that tape came out,
the media was
how he responded to
10 to 1 covering that stuff and anything that he said or tweeted at a far greater rate and margin than anything that would be damaging to Hillary Clinton. I was there. I was covering it.
I agree with you that more time should have been spent on Russia's role that it was playing in trying to give the election to Donald Trump. I think more time should be spent now as we get into...
With this push to get the electors...
I think it was a factor.
A factor that, it was? So this push to get electors...
I think it was a factor. I think...
Wait, the push to get electors to change their votes as a result of this because the Russians stole the election. Do you agree with that?
Well, what I think is it's really unfortunate that the election was close enough that, the tilting of the table that Russia was doing actually had an impact. But I think it is important that electors get an
other factors did that.
Wait, you can't in one phrase say that all Hillary talked about was Russia and that it was a part of the campaign. It was in October. She and her surrogates would go on TV and just say, we can't talk about this because of Russia. Russia's involved, Russia's involved, Russia's involved. And then say after the fact that, well, Russia played a role. You were saying Russia was playing a role, and the American people didn't care. And that's what the polls showed. The American people cared about the U.S. economy, bringing jobs back here, especially in these pivotal swing states. And you can't say in one word that, well, we were talking about Russia in October, and then say after the fact, well, this Russia thing happened, and that made a difference in the election.
Well, here's why it worries me all the more right now. We're still kvetching about this thing more than 5 weeks after the fact. And, Sarah, all I know, we could have an international crisis already had with China and going nuts in the South China Sea, and we're still debating who won the election because Democrats are still ticked off about it. I don't know if now's the time to still be whining and doing all of this stuff when we should be rallying around the winner.
Right, and particularly for Democrats, it's a bad thing because it's prolonging the inevitable and the fact that they need to do some real soul-searching about why they really lost the election. And after Mitt Romney was defeated in 2012, the Republicans entered a pretty brutal period of self-reflection, and they came out the other end identifying some of the factors that contributed to his loss, and they strengthened those parts of their operation ahead of the 2016 election.
Well, to be fair, they didn't see Donald Trump coming, so you're giving them maybe more credit than they deserve.
But some of their infrastructure, some of their voter data.
Your point is well taken. But, Neil, here's what I worry about, though, and you're not in that camp that says the Russians stole this for Donald Trump, I don't think. But do you worry that whatever your political, leanings, that now is not the time to rehash, re-excuse, and complain? We're getting close to these electors meeting in a few days. It wasn't close in the Electoral College. It's certainly right to point out the popular vote, how it went. But again, we don't campaign based on the popular vote. Could have been very different if we did. Having said that, do you have any words of advice for fellow Democrats who look at this and don't change a thing?
This is about defending American democracy at the end of the day.
Oh, you don't mean a word of that. You don't mean a word of that.
No, it is. The Russian interference in this election is historic.
It's Christmas.
And that's what this is about. Listen, if Donald Trump is seriously doesn't think this was a factor, then why isn't he calling for an open and independent investigation
well, he's
right
not,
now?
He's not condoning it.
Why isn't he doing that?
But do you want him to? Do you want him to agree with the Democrats, like Christy Pelosi? In other words, get the electors in a room, give them intelligence, and maybe change their vote?
Neil, he's putting his political interest ahead of the interest of the country. We should be certain that our democracy is not going to be impacted by foreign powers.
We're not even certain the Russians acted.
Intelligence communities are fairly certain that not only the Russians hacked this, but it was directed directly by Putin.
They're not so sure that they're all in unison saying it was the Russians alone. Might be the Russians partnered with somebody. By the way, I do find, and Ron, maybe you can help me with this, that there's a picking and choosing among information when it comes to intelligence. Dead set against CIA intelligence when it's wrong and missed weapons of mass destruction or 9/11. But in this, that could damage a Republican. They're all in on that.
Well, we definitely need to see some solid intel from instead of these sources coming out of everywhere. I mean, the Democrats can't have it both ways, and especially today, right? So we have China.
Well, if you lost, Ron, if your candidate lost, would you be doing right now what Neil's doing?
Absolutely not. If Hillary Clinton won a legitimate election, no. Here's the thing, especially today, you don't think that China, you don't think China is taking advantage of the uncertainty in American politics?
Sarah, what do you make of that? This is actually creating this vacuum of uncertainty. It's compounding the problems a president-elect is going to have.
If Russia had interfered on behalf of Hillary Clinton,
is this compounding the mess?
Well, absolutely. I mean, if your ultimate goal is national security and the protection of democracy, I think it does more to undermine confidence in the institutions, to overblow the selected leaks of a few CIA analysts and extrapolate that to some sort of attempt to hack into the entire democratic system.
All right. Did you just say extrapolate? We don't allow big words on this show. All right. Guys, thank you all very, very much. All very interesting reads.